So today was day 4. It was a very busy day, and it was focused on the Canadian sector of Normandy and D-Day. So we started out by going to Juno Beach where the Canadians landed and got a tour of an underground bunker and the beach itself. And an interesting story that came out there was a story of Germans who were defending the bunker who were trapped inside, and their air was cut off, their communication was cut off, their lights were cut off, and they were kind of forced out of there. And one of the people on the tour had met one of the Germans who were in there recently and heard that story. So that was pretty interesting to hear about. After that, we went to Canada House, which was the first house that was liberated by the Canadians during D-Day. It was right along the beach. We heard from the lady who was still living there, whose family lived there at the time. And again, we heard a really cool story from her about a soldier who had come through, a Canadian during the war, and taken a cross from someplace in town. And that cross was in his jacket pocket, and he was shot in that exact spot. And the cross broke a little bit and saved his life. And then much later, as he was dying back in Canada, he asked his family to return the cross to Canada House in Normandy because that was where it belonged. So the family brought it back there, and we saw the cross in Canada House. So that was another cool story. After that, we went to Pegasus Bridge, which was a place that British gliders seized and controlled the bridge to make sure that the Allies could use it over the course of the invasion. And then the last place we went to was an abbey, a former abbey in the area. And that was a place that a family had owned. It was not an abbey any longer. And the family had been kicked out by the Germans, the SS, who had set it up as a command center because the abbey had a good view of the beach. And during the war, a number of Canadian troops were brought there as prisoner, and 18 of them were executed in cold blood. And this family, once they returned after the war, they didn't know about this. They started gardening, and they noticed that the ground was not even in some places, so they started digging it up, and they uncovered all the bodies. And they talked about how all the Canadian families and people from those units keep coming back there to talk to the family and share the story. And we spoke to a member of the family who was 3 years old at the time, but is still carrying on the memory, and there was a shrine to those soldiers there. So today was really about personal stories. Even in the midst of all these big events and big things, it was about personal stories of soldiers, civilians, people who were there before and after. And I think in any real, true understanding of an event or a place, people are going to have to uncover some of those stories. Certainly going there is a way to access them, but that oral history piece is a really huge part. And you really can't achieve a great level of depth of an event without accessing those personal stories and seeing how it impacted people afterwards, beforehand, and how those legacies carry on from the people who still live there. And it's still very much a part of their lives. And it's something that comes up day after day, year after year. So I think for my project, there's going to have to be some sort of oral history component where students try to gain access to the stories and memories of people who were there or people who still live there, and carry on that memory and that tradition that just doesn't appear in the history books. So don't know how I'm going to do that yet, but that's an idea that I think is really important to have incorporated in the project based on this trip. So thanks for watching. Tomorrow will be another busy day.